Max Reynolds never smiled at the same time twice, yet everyone in Cedar Grove thought he was just another quiet night shift worker. But behind the fluorescent lights and neatly stocked shelves, he was watching, calculating, and planning in ways no one could imagine. One ordinary Tuesday night, his obsession erupted, turning a sleepy gas station into a scene of chaos that would haunt the town forever. The Cedar Grove gas station sat at the edge of town, its flickering neon sign the only bright spot in a stretch of dark, quiet highway. Most nights, the place was empty, with only the occasional car gliding up to the pumps or a lone trucker stopping for coffee. From the outside, it seemed unremarkable, just another small convenience store serving a sleepy community. But inside, the nights were long, and the silence had a way of settling deep into the bones of anyone who worked there. Max, the night shift attendant, knew this better than anyone. He arrived at the station at exactly 10 p.m. every evening, unlocking the glass doors with practiced ease, flicking on the fluorescent lights that hummed softly overhead, and checking the cash register with careful precision. Everything had a place, every snack neatly stocked, the floors swept clean, the pumps polished. There was a rhythm to the job, a repetition that was almost hypnotic, and Max had mastered it to perfection. At first, the quiet nights were comforting. Max would pour a cup of coffee, lean against the counter, and watch the occasional cars roll in and out. He noticed small details about the drivers, the way a man adjusted his hat when paying, how a young woman tapped her fingers nervously on the steering wheel, the way a delivery truck's headlights would cut across the empty lot. Each night, he cataloged these little patterns in his mind, almost without realizing it. But as time went on, the quiet started to feel heavier, more oppressive. The empty store, once a sanctuary, began to feel like a cage. The repetition, the silence, the constant observation, it began to gnaw at him, stirring something restless and unpredictable beneath the surface. Max was careful to hide it. To anyone passing through, he appeared calm, professional, even polite. He smiled at customers, rang up their purchases, and answered questions with an easy friendliness. No one had any reason to suspect that the man behind the counter was quietly studying them, noting the smallest vulnerabilities, imagining scenarios that went far beyond the normal monotony of a night shift. The more he watched, the more his imagination grew. He began to replay interactions in his mind, thinking about what could happen if he changed the routine just slightly. The power of being unseen, unnoticed, and unchallenged in the quiet hours fascinated him. It was a heady feeling, one that mixed boredom with an almost imperceptible thrill. At home, he couldn't shake the tension either. His mind raced with images from the station, and sleep often came in short, uneasy bursts. Max found himself counting the hours until he could return to the store, back to the fluorescent lights and empty aisles where he felt in control. The nights blurred together, each one building on the last, each one adding weight to thoughts he didn't share with anyone. Even his co-workers noticed subtle changes, the way he lingered by the counter after a customer had left, or how he sometimes stared at a car outside for longer than seemed natural. But they shrugged it off, assuming he was just tired or bored like everyone else on the night shift. And so the quiet continued, each night like a slow, invisible drumbeat. The town remained unaware of the tension simmering just behind the gas station doors. Max's meticulous routines hid a growing obsession, a restless energy that seemed harmless at first but was quietly taking root in his mind. The store was his domain, and the night his stage. The question was how long the fragile veneer of normalcy could hold before something inside him snapped, turning a simple, lonely job into a situation no one could have anticipated. The first sign that something was off at the Cedar Grove gas station came slowly, almost imperceptibly. At first, it was small things, a candy bar missing from the shelf, a customer noticing their favorite snack misplaced, or a bottle of soda knocked over in an aisle where no one had been. Max always had a casual explanation ready, a shrug or a simple comment that it must have been someone else, or that he had simply moved it while cleaning. No one suspected him, and the town had grown used to minor oddities at the station over the years. But for Max, these incidents were deliberate, a test of boundaries, a way to measure how much he could manipulate without anyone noticing. Each small act was a thrill, a quiet affirmation of control in a world that otherwise seemed dull and repetitive. Then came the first real incident that stirred panic. A woman arrived late one evening to fill her car's tank. She left briefly to grab a drink from the store and returned to find her gas cap had been removed and replaced incorrectly. It wasn't obvious at first, and she didn't notice until the engine made a strange noise after she started driving. By the time she returned to the station, shaken and confused, Max was behind the counter, smiling politely as if nothing had happened. The woman's unease was palpable, and though she didn't accuse him directly, a seed of suspicion had been planted. Max, however, remained unshaken. To him, the incident was an experiment, a chance to observe fear, confusion, and uncertainty. It gave him a strange sense of satisfaction, a feeling that the quiet nights could hold more than just routine. As weeks passed, the incidents grew bolder. Small thefts became more frequent, and objects from cars occasionally went missing. Max watched intently as customers returned to find minor damages or displacements, recording their reactions silently in his mind. Some were dismissive, some frustrated, but all were unknowingly participating in his growing game. He began to leave subtle traces of himself in the store. A slightly shifted display, a note tucked behind a product, a door left ajar for a moment longer than necessary. Each action was calculated, a way to heighten tension without ever being directly implicated. The line between harmless curiosity and dangerous behavior blurred as his fascination deepened, and the mundane gas station became a stage for his experiments. Locals began to whisper, customers mentioned missing items or odd occurrences in hushed tones at other businesses. Drivers spoke of strange moments at the pumps when they felt watched. Max continued to operate as usual, offering polite nods and friendly smiles, but the sense of unease grew stronger with each passing night. Employees on other shifts noticed the tension too, the way he sometimes lingered near surveillance monitors, or how he seemed almost interested in who came and went. Yet no one suspected the full extent of his intentions. Max had perfected the art of blending in, making his increasingly erratic behavior appear innocuous. By the time the month ended, the station was no longer just a place for coffee or gas. It had become a focal point of quiet fear and whispered suspicions. Max's experiments had escalated, and his obsession with control and observation was driving him further into a mindset that could no longer be contained. Every night offered new possibilities, new opportunities to manipulate and unsettle, and he was careful to ensure that his actions were subtle enough to avoid detection. The town was unaware, but the tension had begun to build, like the slow pressure of water behind a dam, waiting for the moment when it could no longer be held back. By the time Max's strange behavior reached its third stage, the Cedar Grove gas station had become a place of quiet dread for anyone working or stopping there at night. His meticulous observations had evolved into something more calculated, more deliberate. He no longer simply watched the patterns of customers, he began to manipulate them, adjusting displays, moving products, and leaving subtle messages that seemed meaningless at first. Employees who arrived for the day shift noticed oddities: a snack shelf slightly tilted, the floor swept in a strange pattern, a register drawer left slightly ajar. It wasn't enough to accuse anyone, yet the feeling of unease grew heavier with each shift. Max appeared calm and collected, always greeting people with the same polite smile, but the tension was almost tangible, a silent energy that made the air feel thick. Max began leaving small, unsigned notes tucked into aisles or on the counter, cryptic enough to confuse but not frighten too severely. One reads simply, "Look closer," written in careful, almost perfect script. Another suggested actions that could never actually be performed in the store but hinted at observation and control. When employees found these notes, they assumed it was a prank, yet a shiver ran through their spines. Max never revealed his involvement, and the anonymity of his acts added to the sense that something unseen was present, watching, waiting. In these moments, he felt alive in a way the long hours and silence of the night shift had never allowed. Each note, each subtle act was a reminder that he could influence the world around him without anyone realizing. Even the customers were drawn into his silent game. Cars parked in the lot became objects of interest. He noted their arrival times, the number of people inside, and the length of their visits. Items in the store were shifted slightly, just enough to make people doubt their own memory. Surveillance footage, when occasionally reviewed, seemed normal to the untrained eye, but Max had mastered the art of appearing ordinary while moving objects or observing without detection. He seemed to thrive in the tension, the uncertainty, the possibility that someone could be noticing but never quite sure what was happening. Each night became a test of boundaries, both for him and for those around him. The small town began to feel the effects without fully understanding why. Rumors circulated missing cash, minor vandalism, misplaced items, but no one connected these events to Max. Employees spoke of strange feelings, the sensation of being watched even when alone. Customers left with unease, their minds recalling odd details that didn't make sense. Max's behavior had created a pervasive tension that infiltrated the quiet town without anyone realizing it. He carefully maintained the balance, pushing just enough to disturb but not enough to expose himself. As the nights went on, his mental state shifted further. The thrill of observation had become an obsession, and every detail in the store, every movement outside, every reaction from a customer became a subject of scrutiny. Max no longer saw the gas station as just a workplace. It was a stage, a controlled environment where he could play out scenarios no one else could imagine. The line between harmless curiosity and dangerous obsession blurred more with each passing night. He had become untethered from the predictable routines of normal life, drawn deeper into his own private world of control, tension, and manipulation. And the storm that had been quietly building inside him was growing stronger, waiting for a moment when it could no longer be contained. The breaking point came without warning, a night that would forever be remembered in Cedar Grove as the night the gas station changed from ordinary to terrifying. Max arrived as usual, the fluorescent lights flicking on with their familiar hum, the store smelling faintly of coffee and cleaning products. At first, everything seemed normal. Customers came and went, the usual late-night routines unfolding under the quiet night sky, but inside, Max was different. The careful observation, the subtle manipulation, and the quiet tension that had defined his nights had transformed into something more urgent, more compulsive. He moved through the aisles with purpose, checking and rechecking every corner of the store, making small adjustments, hiding objects, shifting shelves. By midnight, Max had begun barricading sections of the store. Shelves were pushed into doorways, displays moved to create barriers, and products stacked in a way that blocked easy access. It was not chaotic at first, it was deliberate, methodical, and almost ritualistic. He worked quickly, the movements precise, as if following instructions only he could understand. Customers who arrived at the pumps noticed the unusual activity inside, but Max maintained his calm exterior, nodding politely as they walked past the glass doors. To anyone looking from outside, he was simply an attentive worker tidying the store during a quiet shift. But the reality inside was far different. The space had become a labyrinth under his control, each barrier, each obstruction a calculated part of his plan. The first alarm came from a delivery driver who arrived around 1:15 a.m. expecting to restock shelves. When he attempted to enter, the main doors would not budge. Panic set in immediately, a stark contrast to Max's composed demeanor. The driver peered through the windows and saw the barricades, the disarray, and finally, the man behind the counter sitting as if nothing was wrong. Frantically, he called the police, unsure if this was some bizarre prank or something far more dangerous. Inside, Max simply observed. The fear in the driver's voice, the rush of activity outside the glass doors, the flashing lights from arriving patrol cars, all of it became part of the theater he had created. Every detail was absorbed, catalogued, and relished. When authorities entered the station, the scene was surreal. Shelves had toppled, snacks were scattered across the floor, and the layout of the store was almost unrecognizable. Max remained calm, seated behind the counter, his notebook open with pages filled with meticulous observations of every customer and employee, complete with notes on habits, reactions, and patterns. It was not mindless chaos, it was a carefully documented account of a mind at work, one that had been steadily unraveling under the monotony of the night shift. The police took control quickly, but the sheer scale of his preparation and the intensity of his focus left them unsettled. The incident shocked the town. Cedar Grove had always been quiet, the gas station a place of routine and familiarity, and suddenly it was the center of a story that seemed lifted from a nightmare. Max's actions were not random, they were precise, obsessive, and terrifyingly calculated. The night had transformed him from a mere night shift worker into a figure of control, fear, and unpredictability, revealing the hidden depths of obsession that had been growing unnoticed for months. The aftermath would leave lasting marks on everyone involved, a chilling reminder that even the most ordinary settings can hide extraordinary darkness. Max's arrest sent shockwaves through Cedar Grove, the small town used to quiet nights and uneventful shifts at the gas station, suddenly found itself the center of a story that seemed almost unreal. People who had once casually stopped for gas or coffee now looked at the station with suspicion and unease. The authorities quickly took over the investigation, cataloging the barricades, the scattered merchandise, and the pages upon pages of notes Max had compiled. Each page revealed a mind obsessed with observation, control, and manipulation, detailing the routines of customers and employees alike with a level of precision that was both impressive and chilling. In the following days, the town tried to make sense of what had happened. Psychologists were called in to analyze Max's behavior, describing it as a combination of deep-seated obsession, boredom, and a desire for control that had escalated into unpredictable actions. They pointed out that his careful planning and meticulous attention to detail had made it difficult for anyone to suspect him before the night of the barricade. It was a stark reminder that people could hide dark obsessions behind the most ordinary facades, and that the everyday routines of life could mask a growing storm beneath. The gas station itself underwent a transformation. For weeks, it remained closed, cordoned off with police tape as investigators combed through evidence. When it finally reopened under new management, the store felt different. Even with the fluorescent lights humming overhead and the shelves neatly stocked once again, locals could not shake the memory of what had occurred. Night shift workers reported feeling uneasy, glancing at corners and aisles as if expecting to see Max lurking in the shadows. The sense of security that had once defined Cedar Grove at night was gone, replaced by a lingering tension that refused to dissipate. Max's case drew attention far beyond the town's borders. News outlets ran stories about the meticulous planning and psychological complexity behind his actions. Experts debated the signs that had been missed, questioning how a night shift worker could harbor such obsessions for months without anyone noticing. The story sparked conversations about workplace observation, the subtleties of human behavior, and how even ordinary places could conceal extraordinary danger. For Cedar Grove, the incident became a cautionary tale, one repeated in hushed voices and reflected upon in quiet hours. The gas station, once a mundane stop along the highway, had become a symbol of hidden darkness, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving. As for Max, he remained calm and composed during the legal proceedings, almost eerily detached from the chaos he had caused. The case revealed the depths of his obsession, but also left lingering questions that no one could fully answer. What had driven him to escalate from quiet observation to barricading the store? How could someone so seemingly ordinary harbor such meticulous, disturbing plans? The town never fully understood, but they all felt the weight of the lesson. Sometimes the ordinary is only a mask, and the most predictable places can hide the most unpredictable dangers. Cedar Grove moved forward, cautious and vigilant, carrying with them the memory of a night shift worker who went beyond obsession into the realm of carefully orchestrated chaos.